Good morning or afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for today's pretty easy webinar on discussing just solutions for working from home for accountants. My name is Talha Baqar. I work on Zoho's Finance Partner Program. I'm also joined by a couple of my colleagues, Val Stead and Nathan Rogerson, who will jump in just a quick second. Before we get started, just wanted to make sure everyone can hear me. And if you can, in the chat box, which should be on the left-hand side of your screen, go ahead and let me know where you're logging in from today. And if you can hear me, you can see the yellow slide up on the screen. Florida, awesome. Thank you, Sebastian. Appreciate having everyone joining us today. I just wanted to cover a few basics. So today's webinar does offer CPE credit. There will be 4 polling questions that will launch throughout the session. I try to space them every 15 minutes or so. So the first one will be about 15 minutes after the hour and 15 minutes thereafter. You do have to answer at least 3 of the 4 polling questions and then take the evaluation that'll pop up on your screen at the end of the webinar to receive your CPE certificate. So we'll have those out to you within a couple hours after the session ends and have that in your inbox. Now, if everyone can hear me, and it sounds like folks can, then I'll go ahead and get started. One thing to note, we're using Zoho Showtime today, which is a pretty cool app. As we progress the slides, if you feel like there was something you missed on a previous slide, you should actually be able to go back and view that slide on your screen. So you can actually see slides that we've already covered, and then you'll also have access to the materials at the end of today's session. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. I'd like to introduce my colleagues, Val and Nathan. You guys there?
Good morning.
Good morning. Hey there, guys. Hey, Val, could you just give us a quick intro about yourself and let us know what you do here?
Good morning. Yes, my background is CPA. I grew up and went to school as a CPA and worked in the accounting profession 20, 30 years, and then also ran an educational training company for a number of years. And I joined Zoho as one of the marketing group for the accounting profession. So it's a pleasure to be here. My background is accounting and is as a CPA. And as mentioned, like in the course description, I've been running a home office for over 25 years. So very pleased to be here giving you some ideas and a few war stories and successful things that have worked for me in my home office over the years.
Thanks so much, Val. Appreciate it. And Nathan, you there too?
Yeah, I'm here. How's everyone doing? I've been in the accounting industry for about 5 years, anywhere from small business to corporate accounting. And just my role here at Zoho is as marketing manager for the finance program. And so we're really looking forward to kind of sharing what our methods are for working from home and sharing some of our experience as well.
Appreciate it, Nathan. And obviously, everyone is working from home right now. Although today I did cheat a little bit and I'm the only one, and I came to Zoho's office here. So I just had to get it a little bit out of the house. I wore my mask, I wore my gloves, but no one else is here. So
so you have the whole building to yourself.
I've got 40,000 square feet to myself. It's pretty nice. Although there's no milk for the coffee, which should have been expected, but so today's agenda is going to be pretty simple. This is just kind of a light webinar. We've been doing some more technical ones. We figured this is something to help kind of break up the monotony. So today we're going to talk about 10 home office tips. These are tips that Val has had a lot of input on just from his experience working, kind of all of us in the last month or so. So things that we found helped us. We hope those can help you as well. Ways to avoid burnout, staying connected with colleagues and clients. And then we'll discuss a few different applications that we recommend. We'll talk about both Zoho applications as well as kind of the main apps that are out there that you may be using. So those are going to be for collaboration between your teammates. Document management, of course, that's just document storage that we'll discuss. Remote support, which is increasingly important, especially for accountants who are helping their clients who may have desktop software. And then we'll have time for Q&A at the end. Although I do recommend using the questions panel in Zoho Showtime. So at any point you have a question, go ahead and drop it in there. And during the polling questions, we'll take a look at those and try to get to them as quickly as we can. So with that, I'd like to get started with those 10 home office tips that we came up with. So Some of the first. Just remember some common sense rules. And actually, when Val told me about some of these, I had to think about them for a minute. But one of those is locking your system when you walk away. And Val, could you kind of tell us,
Right.
why this is
You know,
important even if you're at home?
even in your home office, you think, I'm in my home. I should be able to just leave things wide open and whatnot. No, that's not the case. You've got other family members that come through there. You've got kids at times. You've got other folks that come through. And, even years ago, just give you a couple of quick war stories here. Many years ago, when I was with a small CPA firm, a partner took a paper tax return home to review. This is a paper return. He had it on his desk, folded closed, sitting on his desk. His kids had a party that weekend, and some of the kids wandered into his office and saw that paper file there, flipped it open. Just happened, oh, gee, that's Dr. Smith. They actually knew the doctor whose tax return it was and looked at some of the numbers sitting there in the return. It's like, holy cow. I had another experience where my little granddaughter, I love her very dearly, but she's in and out of my office quite a bit. And I left my machine, unlocked for a few minutes and walked out and came back and found her trolling through Disney, running my machine. I didn't think she was old enough to run my machine. She certainly was. So, like even in a home office, one of the things that's going to help you with being productive and professional in your home office is kind of treat it like it's really a business. Lock the machines. Be really careful with your files you leave laying around and stuff. Watch out. One of my rules of thumb is when you're doing all this technology is everything inbound is suspect. Inbound calls, inbound email, inbound anything. Verify, check on stuff. Links, of course, obviously you shouldn't click on links. There was one recently that was very, very clever that was sent out in text that came across my cell phone in a text saying that something to do with my photo bucket account had been this and that and trying to fool, and of course, into clicking stuff. So look, you got to take this all fairly seriously. Given that, I think you're going to do fine. There's, obviously the caution about inserting USB drives and unsecured sources. And last thing that I love to tell folks, don't forget the good old fashioned pick up the phone. If you're wondering about an email, you got an email that's a little bit kind of weird or telling you to approve to do this payment. Folks, I've taught many sessions over the past couple of years on security, internet security. And I can't tell you how many times in a group of CPAs, let's say I got 30 people in the room. I would say, now, how many of you have actually had trouble with phishing? Like literally had people in your business fall for phishing. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard them say, look, we have really good people, but they were foolish enough to kind of fall for this one because the phishing scammers are so terribly, terribly clever. Just because you're in your home office doesn't mean you're immune from some of those mistakes. So you got to take it very seriously what you're doing, even in your home office.
And one of the things I just wanted to add is this is just from experience because one of the many, everyone at Zoho, Val, you've now learned is wears like 10 different hats. And so one of the hats I have is I actually manage just some of our network IT in the Pleasanton, California office because there's not too many of us. And the number of folks who either for some reason or another don't have antivirus on their computer, it's like one of the easiest, most basic things you can do. And make sure you're using a trusted source, right? We all know that we were actually running a vast antivirus on some personal machines. And then I saw all the reports about how they had been compromised, how they had been selling data. So, then we kind of made the switch to some better applications. But it's an investment in not having to deal with all of the stuff that comes from getting a virus on your computer. And it's a worthwhile investment. So I'd say, invest in one of those antivirus softwares that you feel is most useful for your machine. If you're using a Mac, if you're using a Windows, and it's a myth, folks. If you have a Mac, you can get viruses.
Absolutely,
it's as easy as
yeah,
a Windows machine.
Absolutely, folks. You Mac users, I can go on and on and on all day about that. We've seen so many terrible situations. Well, what they end up doing in most cases, Talha, is you end up being a carrier for Windows viruses, and then you exchange a file with a person and you pollute them, but it doesn't affect you. You're immune. It's a Windows virus, but you're carrying the thing.
And I know we're only on number one, and I don't want to belabor the point, but the last one, I'm not going to lie to you. When I originally read that and you told me reach out to the sender, I thought, who is really going to do that nowadays? And you won't believe I did that actually yesterday. So my dad sent me a picture. He received what he thought was his stimulus check in the mail. It was a cashier's check in his name for like $2,800, and it was a little bit different amount than he should have gotten for the stimulus. But it didn't make sense to me because it didn't say the Treasury on it.
Right.
It didn't have Donald Trump's signature, as everyone
Right.
knows has been reported, and it was from some Texas bank. And so I looked at the FedEx envelope it came in, because it didn't have any other paper inside. I Googled the business, and sure enough, I got their phone number. I called the guy in New York City, and he said that they had someone who was using their bank account information to send other people cashier's checks in their name, just random people across
Right.
the country. And I wouldn't have known that. And he was about to go deposit it, and who knows what would have happened after that. So that's a great advice. I appreciate you bringing that up, Val. All right, so the second one, controlling your lighting. This is also something I didn't think a lot about because I typically work out of a closet if there's a lot of noise in my house. So why is it important to control your lighting, Nathan?
Yeah, so really, I picked all this up from unc.com. They had a good blog post about it. And you really shouldn't ignore your lighting just because it really can help with your mood and your overall productivity. And the study kind of showed that really in cool kind of lighting, it really helps with productivity and your mood during your work hours. And warm lighting is really the time that you use to relax and, to kind of try to fall asleep. And when was the last time you ever went to a massage parlor and they had cool lighting in the room? They always have that warm lighting so that as soon as you get in there, you get relaxed and you get ready for your massage or maybe even take a nap. They never have that cool lighting that's really good for brainstorming and going through and working and being really productive.
Got it. And so when you say warm lighting, you mean like yellowish lighting, right?
Yeah. The picture kind of dictates what
Yeah,
those lights kind of look like. The warm lighting is more of like a yellow tint. Maybe think of
like kind of
another,
an evening, like a soft
yeah,
white on your
and
lamps, right?
an evening light, yeah.
And
And
and so
another,
one thing I was interested in, just want to add real quick, is I visited one of my friends up in Seattle, and for folks who have ever been in the Pacific Northwest or live up there, it's very cloudy all the time. And so what's interesting is in his whole house he had daylight lighting installed because they have to turn on the lights sometimes as early as like noon because it's too dark in the house. And he said if you put yellow lighting over time, you do kind of subconsciously feel like, hey, it's evening time, it's time to relax, it's time to not focus as much. And so having that white light is actually something they recommend in areas that are cloudy.
yeah, for sure. And also another thing is that you should really just try to find a place with natural light during the day because everyone right now is working at home. And I really found a place at my house where I have two windows kind of, just right next to me so that I can get that natural light so I don't have to necessarily turn on a light. So it really helps me out during the day to kind of keep me motivated and helps me keep track of time as well.
Your operating systems also have a setting where you can go in, both Mac and Windows, where you can say in the evening, just soften up the screen, switch, go looking for that switch. It's in both operating systems. You can switch that. Very helpful in the evening when you're doing that. I was recently in an office too that was really dim, and I actually had to carry my own little fluorescent light to add light in that space during the day because I found myself having a hard time keeping awake without decent, like you say, Nathan, good daylight light type light. And if you don't understand this bit about light, go study the colors of light. There's different colors of lighting, and you can see how the warmer light's better in the evening, brighter light, higher Ks in the day, and it'll help you with your productivity.
Fantastic. Appreciate that, guys. All right, so on number 3, getting into some more important points. So upgrading your internet connection. Obviously, having a faster internet connection means when you're working from home, it's easier to connect, but different types of internet connections actually have different types of speeds depending on the traffic. So a lot of places, especially newer developments, they have access to fiber optic, and there's different speeds you can get. Most folks have access to cable, and then there are still a lot of people who are on broadband. So one of the things about cable is that even though you can get some really high speeds, like in my home, I have cable, and I think I'm at 400, 500 megabits download. The upload speed is still limited to maybe a tenth of that. So 5 to 50 megabits. And then nowadays, since everyone's at home, I've noticed that my speed, which typically I could get in the daytime, was around 400, is now about half that, about 200. And that's because cable is throttled when so many other folks are using it. So one of the ways to get around that, if you do have access to a fiber connection, even though it may be the same speed as a cable connection in your area, it's going to be a guaranteed speed, and the upload is significantly higher. And I think, Val, you've upgraded to fiber at your house.
Oh yeah, evening. You're especially notice it in the evening. I don't know what the deal is about the evening, but everybody and their dogs on the machines are out from inside or outside, back and inside, and you'll seriously notice the difference between cable and fiber in the evening. So if you can get to fiber, it's a substantial difference. Well worth the money, in my opinion.
Yep. And number 4, so don't rely on mobile hotspots. That doesn't mean that a mobile hotspot isn't an excellent tool as a backup. It just shouldn't be your primary tool for a number of reasons, namely that it doesn't necessarily have the bandwidth to handle as much as you would typically put on a load that's coming in through your cable or fiber connection. And then also something that came up just a couple days ago is knowing your nearest public Wi-Fi access point. So this is if you unfortunately right now nobody can leave their homes, but Nathan, I think you lost your power like yesterday.
Yeah. So I lost my power yesterday for about 3 hours, and normally if that were to happen, I kind of know some of the coffee shops around here that I like to go to, but unfortunately due to the circumstances, I couldn't really go to Panera Bread. But I think Val actually has a really funny story about having to go out and go to a public Wi-Fi.
Yeah, we had a deal here, and I don't know what the deal was here in Centerville, but it was about 5 years ago. And, I've got, even back then I had decent cable connect, and then I've got my cell phone as a MiFi kind of backup. I even had a separate MiFi device. I had, all 3 of these different things standing ready, and I was on a very important meeting coming up, a call and everything. And somebody up on like Main Street lost control of their car and hit a power pole. And it put such a surge through the local electricity network that it knocked out the cell tower, knocked out our power for 3 or 4 hours. And what I did is I just packed up my machine, and I knew McDonald's had free Wi-Fi. And so I'm sitting down there and I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of my go-to backup spot. Is go down because I got food, I got bathroom, and I got decent, internet connection. You're going to have some background noise, but the thing is, I picked a couple of them. There's one Subway I go to that I'll use at times if I need to get like calls and stuff. Another McDonald's. Just have those kind of already in your mind set, so when you get in a panic, you can run. But the order of use there, I'd say, clearly your dedicated internet access, whatever that is, mobile hotspots, MiFis, go to that, and then like a public Wi-Fi if you got to go to that. Realizing those public Wi-Fi access points, though, boy, be really, really careful what you do. I mean, VPN will like seal you there. If you got a VPN, you're in good shape. But if you're going out there and you're like using McDonald's like I was doing, I was not doing anything serious. I was not logging into any serious accounts.
Right.
I was just checking that one meeting, that one call, that one thing. And you got to be real careful there not to divulge logs.
Basically, what you told me is you kind of go there for a specific purpose, right? Like
Right.
you have to have a call, you take that call, and then you get out of there.
Right.
It's not something where you don't want to be downloading files in public Wi-Fi. You don't want to be logging into anything. That's the most risky, right? Logging into any kind of applications that are going to, and there's obviously different methods that you can employ to make sure that, the accounts you use have various passwords. Don't use the same password for your meeting software as you do for your email, for example.
Right.
So making sure that you take all of those precautions are very, very important. Again, it's kind of the least favorable, but it's an option that you should know when you're working from home in cases where you're able to go out. Unfortunately, right now it's not that case. So in your house, let's say you don't have a dedicated office. If you do, amazing. But if you don't, choosing your space wisely. So Nathan, why does that matter? Because I've basically been working from my bed for the last 5 weeks, and I feel fine.
Working from your bed. Yeah. So really just choosing your physical location, I think that's just as important as the lighting. And it really helps with productivity and knowing that this is the place to work and this isn't the place to relax. And that's really what I try to do is I have a designated place in my home where I'm next to a window. I get the natural light, but at the same time, I'm able to know that this is where I work. This is where I study. This, this is where I try to learn things, and it's not in front of the TV where I get distracted. It's at a desk with no distractions. Maybe there's a window so you can look out occasionally, but it needs to be somewhere in your home where it's just a designated spot. And I know, Val, you have a really good home office over there.
Yeah, I'm pretty spoiled, folks. Years ago when we built this home, I knew I'd be running a home office. So I have, if your goal, I mean, your absolute goal is something like I have right now, which is dedicated space with doors to close off. I've got good front windows out here. Now, some people prefer to be in the back of their home office where they don't see distractions. I prefer to be right up front, like I've got a command view of the front of my house so I can see deliveries. I can see what's going on. On occasion, I've had to run out and rescue a kid that's fallen off a bike. That's all fair game for what I wanted to do with my office. A lot of my colleagues, though, I've talked to, and they say they don't want that distraction. So they prefer to be kind of in the back of their home. Still windows, I think, are terribly important, as Nathan mentioned, but you need that dedicated space if you can get it. It's so hard right now where everybody's working from home kind of as a temporary solution or whatever, but see if you can't work on your space. Give you an example. My son-in-law, he's been working from home for his business now, like we all have, long enough where he's felt the pressure because they have 2 children, that he's starting to frame up an office in their basement just to kind of make some space where they can close off stuff, because it really does make that big of a difference if you can.
Yeah, that kind of goes into setting boundaries and communicating as well, because I know that a lot of people right now are working at home with their spouses. And right now, my wife and I were both always on the phone. We're always in meetings, and we both put 2 different spots in the house, total opposite sides of the house, so that we can, communicate, and she can have a conversation with her client and I can have a conversation with some of our partners, and we don't hear each other on the phone and everything. So it's really important to kind of set those boundaries and let your family members know, this is my area. You need to kind of respect my area. And I actually saw this really cool post on Etsy. I don't know if y'all have ever been to Etsy, but it's kind of a people go on there and sell things that they make from scratch. And someone made this sign where it says Mom's Office. And it's really cool because it lets it could let the husband, or it also lets the kids know that, hey, you can come on in, I'm free, or you're working, please knock, on a call. Don't disturb. Really, that's important. Right. Because, definitely like right now, if Val's having a webinar and his granddaughter walks in, that probably wouldn't be the best thing. So you got to have some sort of boundaries and communicate efficiently.
And it's tough with kids. Just a little heads up. I raised 4 kids and went through this whole home office with all the kids. And, you'll still have some interruptions at times, and it's something you got to deal with. In today's environment, getting out it is not as bad as it was years ago. But still, let me tell you something to be fair on the other side of that. If you're working with your family and your kids, and you tell them when not to bother you, then also respect that you need to also get out of that space and go out and give them some attention at times when you're not busy and you're not caught up in your work, that you will go out and spend some time with your child when they came in looking for you. So like if I'm on an important call and my child or family or wife or whoever's looking for me, and I kind of see them come in and I give them the stop sign, which was my famous hand sign for get out, I'm on a business call, whatever. My family still makes fun of me to this day about this, but I would, after that event, whatever it was, I would always try to remember to get out and find out what's going on. Was this really important? Is this something they needed me for? If you do that, they're going to respect your space better than if you really never get out there.
And with that, I am going to launch our first poll question. I am a few minutes late, so thanks for bringing that to my attention, Lynn. It's a pretty quick question. And oops, I actually launched our last question, but that's okay. These are things that'll come up so folks can answer this. What should you look for in an online document storage? A little bit out of order. This is something we'll discuss in the next few slides. Again, you don't need to answer these correctly to get CPE. It's just to mark your attendance at that moment in time.
Yeah, it's mainly just let us know that you're still there is what the CPE qualification requires.
All right, fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and close this, and vast majority of everyone said all the above. That is correct. Seems like this will be pretty easy going forward. All right, so we talked about setting boundaries and communicating, optimizing your space for comfort. Obviously, that was kind of what I was alluding to earlier. not necessarily sitting on your bed for hours on end, because it'll be terrible for your back. You know what's interesting is now every time I log into my phone, I've been seeing this ad coming up from Office Depot, and it says, hey, I bet that couch or bed is not so comfy. Like, we can ship you a chair. No need to come to the store. So they're kind of using marketing to get at that too. But having a good chair can make all the difference. And
Good chair and a good desk too, Tally. You know those desks we have in Pleasanton, the raise and lower? I have a similar type desk in my home office that raises and lowers. And I'm telling you, standing up and working sometimes is terrific, folks. You can even buy something that goes on like a kitchen counter that'll raise and lower for you. There's all kinds of products out there. But get something to where you're not in the same position all day. It really affects your productivity and your health too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's one I bought for it's one I bought for my mom, actually. It was only like $100, and it's on top of the table. Yeah. So you don't need a new table, like you said. And it's like spring loaded. And so you can basically like lift a latch on the side, and it lifts up your entire monitor and keyboard area. So if you're using a laptop, then those are really easy too, because you can just set your laptop down on top. So just make sure you have a little bit of varied area to sit in, to stand in. Kind of one thing I've noticed is I'll sit in the same place for like 3, sometimes 4 hours. And then once I get up, you're like really stiff. And after that, your productivity is just all but tanked. So it's better to, I think, have, short stints that you work in. And we'll talk about some of that organization coming up as well. So here's one of the most important things. Even though you're at home, you think your home network is safe. It may not be as safe as you're used to at work, especially if you have someone who is a network engineer or monitors your networks there. So could you kind of describe why this is useful? So what are we double checking here? What are we looking for?
Yeah, just kind of a heads up. If you really are going to be working from home a lot and going forward, working from home a lot, considering having business grade routers, switches, whatever, internet security. I have a full blown firewall, switch, router in my basement here, just full business protection, firewalls, the whole business, versus just coming home and using a simple, router from Comcast for the cable and going from there. So as you go forward and your home office becomes more serious, just consider more business grade gear in that home office to help you and protect you. And a couple other things too on Wi-Fi. Don't use your family name and the name of your SSID on your Wi-Fi. Years ago, I put the Steeds. Our last name is Steed, and I thought that was clever. And this was many years ago. And I learned in a heartbeat about bored teenage hackers or whatever. A month or so later, I couldn't connect to it. And I went in and looked, and the SSID said the Stupids. So some local kid had hacked my password. I wasn't careful enough and hit it. So your SSID shouldn't have anything to do with your family name, your business name, your whatever. Even in your home office, use something different. Completely different. Just be secure and consider business grade hardware in your home office. I also have a really good shredder. Look, you still got to worry about security. If you wanted to use USB docks, that's great. Multiple monitors. Some people love multiple monitors. What I have in my home office, folks, I come back and dock my Mac into, is a little USB dock that goes to a really big, wide monitor. It's like a 34, 35-inch wide. So I can put 2 images up. Like I can have this whole webcast up in one section. And then over here, I can have my email and other work I'm doing over here in sheet and calculations in another section. So consider business grade stuff as you grow your business office. You're not going to be able to buy all this stuff right off the bat. But as you go along, upgrade your stuff.
That's good advice. And one of the things about firewalls, so just having kind of some experience with network management here at our Zoho office. So a firewall is really, it's an awesome device that is typically built into most, home office computers. So firewall basically, it monitors all your incoming connections, and you can choose what it lets through and what it doesn't. If you do decide to have a full dedicated firewall, it's basically an entire device that you can purchase, and it'll be in between all of the devices in your home and the actual internet itself. So if you think about it, your laptop might have a really good firewall built into it, or your computer, but you may have an older computer or another device that isn't necessarily as secure, and it can still give you access to other files in your network. So having a firewall actually protects all of those machines before they have any of that access. So
Just
it's
to
something
throw
that
out,
kind of,
I don't like to throw product names out, but for years we've
Mhm.
used the Sonic Wall Soho products. They're like $500 for a home office. That's a lot of money for an individual to pay, but these things are serious. The Soho 250s got a whole security software assigned to it and the whole bit. And so that's what I've been using in my home office is the Soho Sonic Wall stuff for years.
that's good advice. Cool. All right. So kind of getting into some of our different tools, and I'll kind of hand it over to Nathan to discuss some of those. Oh, we still have a few things on avoiding burnout before we get to those tools. Apologize.
Right. Now, let me take this just quickly. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but one thing you've got to be aware of, the natural tendency when you're working from home, and most people that do this are good workers, they work constantly. Mobile tools allow the technology to invade your personal life. And that really all started way back when with the cell phone. I found that out in a heartbeat. Let me just tell you something. It's not a great idea to answer the call when your son's up to bat in a baseball game. It's the bottom of the ninth. You're down a couple runs. We got guys on base and your son's at bat. But that very, very important client is calling me. And I looked down at my waist. I could see caller ID. This is a really big client. All right. Don't answer the phone. The reason I know that, I answered the phone. It was the wrong thing to do. Nobody was happy. You've got to separate your personal life from your work life. I could go on for hours on this, but you've got to have boundaries. And you're the only one that can manage this. Watch for burnout. Okay. Watch how you communicate with others. And I apologize for my coworkers here. They're on the call with me here. I will send stuff out on weekends. And let me just tell you, when I do that, I don't expect replies on weekends. But if you start doing that, sometimes what you're training your other coworkers to do is to work on weekends. That's not good. Okay. What I want my coworkers to know is I don't want them to reply on weekends. I'm just getting stuff out so they can reply on Monday or something. But you might be training people to work with you in after hours. That can lead to burnout too. Know when to turn it off, walk away. Some people actually say, what I do is I like to actually have a little commute. I'll get my car, run down the local coffee shop and get a coffee, or in my case, I'll have Diet Coke and I'll get a big Diet Coke, come back to work, and then it's my work session. And then I walk out the door and I close the office. Okay, so I literally have this little ceremonial commute of some kind versus just walking from my bedroom into my office and working. That's fine. I will actually go down and get in my car and just drive sometimes just to break up the situation. So be careful with that. Also be careful to communicate with your coworkers when you're in office, when you're going to be slow to respond, what's going on. But watch out for the burnout. It's real. Okay, it's real. I've seen many, many people that are constantly at work. And I'll tell you how you can tell if somebody's doing this a little too much. If you happen to send an email or a text or something out at an odd hour and they respond to you immediately, that might be a person that might be working too many hours all at the same time.
Right, right. And obviously those are things, we as employees, often if I get a message from, someone at Zoho, I'll try to respond to it as quickly as possible. But there are, most people, most folks understand, at least at good companies, I would say, that there's a separation between, when people are online, when they're offline, and expecting, some sort of delay if it's an after hours message. So, it all depends on kind of your work environment, but at Zoho, it's been really flexible, really healthy, and being able to divide that up. So I think that's really good advice, and kind of staying in that thought. So how do you actually stay focused? Because this is something that I've had a bunch of trouble with, and I know that you and Nathan have had some experience kind of coming up with ways to stay focused. But could you share some of those?
Yeah, I'll give you my comments here and my ideas just quickly here. But I see too many people that'll reach down in their email box or their text box or whatever, and they'll reply to what's immediate. In other words, somebody that might be pressuring them. That may or may not be the most important thing for you to be doing. Have a list, and then something I've learned over the years, have lists of lists. And then let me give you one warning about lists. Don't look down at a bunch of lists that you haven't gotten done and get frustrated and get disheartened. Take that list if you need to, shred it, build a new list. I'll do that sometimes daily because your list will change. And focus in on a key element. There was a book I read recently. It's a very good book. I should have actually fixed the spelling on that one. The name of the book is The One Thing. It's a very good book on organization and staying focused And it really does apply to a home office because in most cases, you are your own manager. And so having things laid out and organized in an organized fashion so you're focused on what really matters most right now, that's good. You also need to kind of figure out when are you the most productive. One of my partners for years, I knew he was the most productive in the morning. I'm not a morning person. I'm more productive afternoon, evening. So you need to kind of realize what your coworkers do and when you're the most productive. Plan your most important things for that most productive time when you can really get stuff done. And watch out for the multitasking myth. I grew up with a lot of technology. A lot of the gurus of the time were saying, well, you've got to be doing this and that. You've got to be multitasking. If you're really multitasking, you're not accomplishing anything. There are times when you've got to shut off the email, shut off the phone, shut off other stuff and focus on a task or a project, and you've got to get it done. Okay. Mm-hmm. Completing really important things is terribly important to your coworkers because they're relying on you. And if when you say, I'm going to get that done by then, if they can't rely on you to get it done by then you're going to be known as unreliable or not be able to get it done. Years ago, there was a really good book about organizing Outlook. And truth is, the woman that wrote the book, I think the book's still out there, to be honest with you, but she really gives you good organizational ideas for a home office by organizing your Outlook. And instead, it really became more of a self-organizational tool. And she talks a lot about that. When you make commitments, put them on your calendar, get things done, or tell the people if you're coming up on deadlines, I can't get it done, communicate that to them. Look, I'm not going to be able to get this done. That cross communication with your coworkers is terribly important so that they're known as a person that will get stuff done based on what you commit to and when. And that also helps you stay focused. That's my 2 cents, Nathan. Let's see what you got.
Yeah, really, I believe in that multitasking is a myth because whenever I try to do multiple things at a time, say put this webinar together and work on a partner issue, I can never work 100% on both of them. I can only do about 50-50 on both. So really what I have to do is kind of what you're saying about the list and the one thing is just focus on one thing at a time and just start taking things off that list that I complete. And another cool thing that I do, I don't know if it's cool, but I think it's okay, is I have the my phone charger at a totally different spot than my office, my computer and everything, so that if I use my phone too much and the battery's dying, I kind of know like, hey, I need to slow it down. And I put my phone over in the charging station, which is away from my desk so that I can just focus on work for that time being.
Oh man, I have not checked my iPhone screen time in the last 5 weeks. I'm too scared.
Yeah,
I turn on all of those.
every week it says you're
15 hours a day.
Yeah, it's funny.
But appreciate that, guys. All right, so we do need to launch our second poll question. I know I'm totally off my my timings here, but we'll make this one real quick. What are some ways you find working from home difficult? If you do say other, go ahead and let us know in the chat box what that other is. So actually, one thing I didn't put here, and I wasn't sure if I should, maybe I should have next time, is pets. So I know some folks are voting kids, but I, for folks that have done some other webinars with me, they may have heard like a squawking in the background. So I have a African gray parrot who loves to make his cameo in some of these sessions. I'm gonna go ahead and share the results. Too many distractions, I agree with the majority here, but there's so many things. It kind of depends on the day, I would say, not feeling motivated, too many distractions. But yeah, so one of the things I do with a lot of these webinars is I'll just go into a closet, into a different part of my apartment that's far enough away and sealed that the squawking doesn't affect my meeting. So sometimes I feel like you just have to escape into a dark corner, just get some work done, and a closet can be pretty helpful for that.
Yeah.
All right, so staying connected. Now we're actually going to jump into the tools that are going to help you, and this is kind of the meat and potatoes of this. So the most important thing for accountants, right, is staying connected with clients, and then if you have a firm with more folks, then staying connected with your team. So there are different ways to do this. What are some of those basic tools? Obviously, everyone who is kind of thrown into the current work from home situation, they may not have had time to set up some of these things on everyone's devices, make sure everyone kind of knows how to use it. So we've all been kind of figuring out things as we go along. I know a lot of folks have been using Zoom for video calls, just trying to use their Google Drive, whatever they have at their disposal. But now that we've kind of been in this groove, we can actually start to think about what some of those tools are that we should use. So some of the areas that we'll cover are collaboration, document management, and remote support. So collaboration, you want to kind of set this off, Nathan?
Yeah, so we'll try to go through this as efficiently as possible with the time we have. But so with collaboration, there's two basic functions of it. There's video conference tools and there's virtual team communication. And so what's good about video conferencing is, as of now, more and more teams are obviously meeting virtually. I actually read a report that would said about 5 million people work from home. This was in 2019, and currently, it's probably, I don't know, 70 million. But yeah, so more and more people are working remotely. So what does that mean? You got to have virtual meetings. And right now, Val and Talha, we're all in different states, so we have to meet virtually every single time we meet. And this also reduces travel time. So Val doesn't have to travel down to Austin and come meet with me. We can just have a virtual meeting. So it just takes care of that, and it takes care of the travel time and costs. And it really connects our team. So every week we have a weekly meeting where we just kind of touch base and see what we have to do for the week. And if we need to touch base any other day of the week, we just reach out to each other and set those meetings up. And it also provides structure over a phone call, because if we're doing a virtual meeting, we can set up a screen and just have an agenda. So we're not just freely talking. I know sometimes Talha and I, we get on the phone and we'll just start talking about anything, cars, food, whatever we feel like talking about. But if we have a meeting set up and we're screen sharing, we can really dive into what we need to talk about for that time. And virtual team communication, this is really chat products, chat tools. And this is used to improve communication, and it really saves time, because if you need to know something, rather than sending an email, you just send a chat. Just the other day, I sent a chat to Talha about this webinar, and he was able to respond to me fairly quickly. So I didn't have to sit there and wait for him to communicate with me over email. And it also has an employee engagement. I know, like Val said, on the weekends, he'll send us something, and we just send him a little emoji saying that we got his message, and essentially telling him that we'll look into it as soon as possible.
The thumbs up emoji is my absolute favorite.
It's the go-to for sure.
It communicates everything. I haven't used thumbs down as frequently, but I may have to start employing it too, just to balance it out. No, but definitely, I think one of the most important things about using some of these chat apps, like, of course, many folks are using Slack. We'll talk about that. Zoho has their own version called Click, which is spelled CLIQ for some reason. But it's a really great app, and one of the things I just really like is there's kind of a formality that emails have taken on, and I just feel bad replying with a 1 or 2 or 3 word email unless it's very specific and I can answer it. I feel like I have to give more details. Whereas a chat app, it's a little bit more free flowing. It gives you the ability to create channels, which is probably my favorite feature. So the vast majority of the communication between Val, Nathan, and myself is through a Click channel. And that's where we can all respond. So if I have a question and I don't know if it's specifically for Nathan or for Val, I don't have to copy them both on an email chain, and then going through email chains is a nightmare anyway. You just put it into a chat channel. It saves you a lot of time. But one of the most interesting things I've found is I work with a lot of accountants here who are partners with Zoho, and they are actually using these channels to communicate with their clients as well. So they'll have a couple of folks at the firm and the client, and it could be a couple of folks at the client. It could be the owner and maybe a manager or someone else. And they'll create a channel for each of those clients. And that keeps all of their conversations in kind of an easy to read format. And so it's a little bit more colloquial. It's a little bit more friendly than doing emails. And if it's something that you're willing to employ, as I found, it's very useful. Then it's something you can try out. So we'll talk about some of those applications are. Nathan, here are some of those trends that you were talking about. If you could cover.
Just showing you the trends. It's increased 44% over the past 5 years. The most interesting one is over the past 12 years is 160%. And you can go to this blog post as well to see the stats.
Awesome. So yeah, of course it's remote work has grown, and obviously right now we're at like 1,000,000% increase in remote growth. Everyone is at home. But some of those tools that we've been using, so video conference tools, Zoho Meeting is one of them. Showtime, which is the tool we're actually using right now, is somewhat similar. Showtime's a little bit more for presentations like we're doing where it's webinar style. Meeting is much more for collaboration. So, folks who've been using Zoom, this is a similar tool. I find one of the most useful parts of Meeting is being able to record the session and send it out to folks. Just like this session is being recorded, we'll share that link with you guys as well. And then also being able to share your screen, switch presenters, mute participants if everybody doesn't need to be talking. There's even a feature in Zoho's webinar platform, which is part of Zoho Meeting, where attendees can raise their hand, just like class, and you can call on them. So it makes kind of larger meetings with more folks a little bit more tenable to process. So Zoho Meeting is one of those tools that you can utilize. There's also, of course, Zoom. So a lot of folks have been using. It's there's been some recent talk about kind of people, jumping into Zoom sessions, kind of hacking into them. These are some things that occur in some of these different softwares. So definitely want to look out for the ones that are the most secure for you. One of the interesting things is that in the free editions for Zoom, you're limited to like a 40-minute cutoff. And in Zoho Meeting, there isn't a cutoff for the free edition. So there's something to kind of take a look at, out there. So many folks have been utilizing some of these tools. Now, I discussed Showtime just a moment ago. One of the things that I just want to kind of talk to people about with Showtime is that there are so many different ways that we actually end up doing training sessions, especially as accountants, that we don't actually think about them. So a lot of the accountants I work with, they'll end up having a session at some point where they're teaching their clients how to use, let's say, the accounting system, if they're actually implementing it, or an inventory management system, or so on. And you're not able to actually go to them. Showtime's a great way to actually have some slides. You can also share your screen. There's also a whiteboard function where if you have if you're using a touchscreen tablet and you have a pen or something, you can actually draw and everyone can kind of view those. Where it's a very kind of focused built tool that makes it a little bit easier to do that. And so if you have a lot of these sessions, this is an application that you would want to check out. So I'm going to go ahead and launch our third polling question. And again, I did them a little bit out of order, so this one's from earlier today, but what are some strategies you use to improve focus? And one thing I just wanted to mention, this is going way back to the beginning of the presentation. It's really interesting. I wish I had actually put this in the slides earlier, but this is related to kind of your home network security. So it doesn't necessarily work if you are, if you've lost power at your house, but if you do have power and you're not at home, then you can actually VPN into your home network. There's a lot of routers now that let you do that. Sorry, I'm gonna go ahead and show. So it looks like most folks use a checklist. A few put their phone or other distractions away. Very nice. So yeah, I just put a link in the chat box for the router that I use. You can actually create a VPN from your own router. So if you have a good high quality router, like a Netgear Nighthawk or some of the better kind of more business grade routers out there, it'll actually let you set up a VPN profile, and then you can use any kind of VPN client. And instead of logging on to a public VPN server where it scrambles your information, so someone on the who's at that public Wi-Fi may not have access to know exactly where you are based or what websites you're accessing. But on the other end, you're not really sure how secure those VPNs are. So I always recommend using a VPN into your home network. Again, it doesn't work if your home doesn't have power, but for the most part, I recommend. It's great for travel. It's great for some of the more secure functions. And then also it just lets you access things on your home network too. So it's pretty cool. So I know that's a little bit out of the blue. I just wanted to mention that before I forget. Moving on. So some folks mentioned Click in the chat. So folks who love Click, they really love it. And folks who haven't tried it, they just don't know how great it is yet. So one of the things I mentioned earlier is setting up channels. So Nathan, could you tell us a little bit about channels and kind of creating teams in Click, why that's more useful than doing like instant messaging, which is what most people think of with chat?
Yeah, so with Click, we have a functionality where you can set up teams, and we have one for our team, accounting team over here at Zoho, and we also have one for the Austin office over here at Zoho. And what that really does is it just allows you to collaborate as a team or as a company. And it, definitely right now it allows the company to reach out to us, tell us when we're coming back to work, when everybody should come back, and what people should be doing right now. And it also, with the team chat, we have between Talha and Val and myself, we just go on Click and chat to each other, see kind of what our thoughts are on something, and we can even call each other and Click to just have a quick team meeting. So it's really efficient.
That's the part that I'm quite impressed with, Nathan, is the audio quality on Click, and both Click and Meeting and Showtime, but really Click as well, just to quickly call a bunch of people or one person. And it's clean, it's clear, it's easy. I'm very pleased with it. And I've used Teams, I've used Skype for Business, I've used all these different tools for years. And I got to say, I think that's where we have quite an advantage. Click is clean, easy, and fast.
And one of the things I like to stress is for Zoho, especially, we're all working in a lot of us are working in different countries. The three of us are in the U.S., but I've talked to some of our team members who are in Canada, a lot of them who are in India, some are in Mexico. And initially I was using Google Voice, and I would load credits on there, and I basically memorized like half of the country codes of the world. And now I don't really have to do that. As long as the person's on Click, I can use that tool, and I don't actually have to use like a less professional app like WhatsApp. It's still within my work environment. It's still related to everything that I'm doing. It's not Facebook Messenger. So I really like that functionality, especially if you work with folks or if you have clients that are in different countries. So
yeah,
it's also
clarity
free.
Across from like here to India yesterday with Ajay was great. It was a great call. So
yeah, the quality is good. And so some things here that Nathan wanted to show us. So Click has a free edition that has all of these great functions. So screen sharing, single sign-on, OAuth with Google, so you don't have to set up a new account with Zoho if you don't want to. And then even an Active Directory sync. These are some of the functions in Slack that are paid. Again, I've used Slack a number of times. The free version of Slack is very good for just very basic communication. But I did want some of these added features, like with when I was in college and we used Slack. Would love to have had the option to use screen sharing, which was in one of the paid features. And so those are just some of the things you want to consider, what's important to you and which tool integrates with the rest of your ecosystem. So it's one of the things I recommend.
I want to throw up a poll, Talha, while we're talking about Connect here.
Yeah, so we actually have one more. I'm going to launch it just before
the
end.
I thought we were missing one, so.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you bringing that up. So you only need 3 of the 4.
That's right. That's right.
Should be all right. So Connect is a little bit different tool. Could you kind of tell us about Connect a little bit, Nathan? Why is it different than Click? I think people sometimes find this hard to grasp what the differences are.
So what I really compare Connect to Click is Connect is really a social media app for your work. And that's kind of strange to say, but it's almost like a Facebook for the work. And what's great about it for Zoho is we use it as a tool to communicate what's going on within Zoho. So a lot of times, just recently, we've had town hall meetings where they'll go on Connect and post a board about what's going on with Zoho currently. And we all go on there and we can message and ask questions. And it's really a way for the executives to connect with us, because as a company starts to grow, it's harder for executives to communicate, to lower level employees. So that's really what we use Connect for right now. And there's other great tools as well. You can go on there and post things about what you're doing and see if anybody has ideas. And it's really a way to just exchange ideas and just kind of receive updates with what's going on in the company.
Kind of what you mentioned. So you were saying like how it's easier for executives to communicate with the rest of the organization. I feel that that's true, but the opposite is also probably even more true, where
Mhm.
everyone in the organization suddenly has a voice.
Yeah.
And so, for example, like we work on some really cool projects, and it's helpful to broadcast that out to the rest of the org to see if there's someone else who may want to jump in. And even if you're only working in a team of 5 or 10 people, the way I typically describe Connect versus Click or any kind of chat app is that Connect lets you go back in time and
Right.
it
It's forward
preserves those
forward.
posts.
Right.
Yeah, there's like a history associated with them.
Right.
Whereas if you're using like a chat channel, after about 24 hours, you're not going to be able to find much of anything. I mean, there's a great search function, but it's not really designed for going back and looking at those thoughts.
Mhm.
So that's why Connect is more useful. And when you say Facebook for work, it's like Facebook without all of the bloat and ads and all of the kind
Yeah,
of
it's just related for sure.
right. It's like it's so those are some of the differences where I found Connect is really useful for a whole host of things. One of the functions I really like in Connect is, and if I go to the next slide, I think you can kind of see this.
Mhm.
On the left hand side, there's actually tasks, and
Mhm.
so this is kind of the general feed. So you can launch polls for the office, just post your thoughts. You can create groups for the different organizations within your company. But tasks have been really helpful because there is a task board there that you can share with other folks on your team. So it's basically like a Kanban view where you can slide tasks from left to right or whichever direction based on different statuses that you can set for them. So I just really liked using it. It's a really fantastic application. It's actually has a lot more than I think we even really tell people about. So if you're already in the Zoho ecosystem, definitely recommend checking it out. And I know a lot of folks out there are using Zoho One anyway, but it's just a really great tool, especially for working from home.
Mhm.
Now, I do want to kind of quickly get along to document management. We're a little bit behind. So some of the most important things about document management, we already know that cloud storage can save cost. I was just talking to my dad the other day who was looking at a external hard drive, and I said, why don't you just use, a cloud storage? He's like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. It would be so much easier. So it's something that's portable. It's something that's more secure because you're not relying on a physical device that can get taken away. But there are some things you want to look at. So with something like Zoho Work Drive, one of the most important things is actually finding software that's compliant with some of the industry standards out there. So
Stock
SOC 2,
standards, right?
Type 2 security,
Mhm.
and ISO 27001. These are really important ways to know that the organization is complying across the board. So not just in certain areas. So you definitely want to make sure that applications you're using, you can find those certifications quickly. But most importantly is working as a team. So one of the things with WorkDrive is actually being able to share documents and not have to, send it as an attachment kind of, you'd be surprised how many people still do that where you're not truly collaborating. So that's one of the things I like to take a look at with
Mhm.
WorkDrive.
Yeah,
So you can
as
look at
accountants tell, let me just throw one thing in there I still see too
sure.
much of. Accountants and other people, please do not send sensitive information attached to an email that's not encrypted, like 1099s or W-2s or tax return information. We still see way too much of that flow in an email. It's wide open.
Mhm.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so some of the features you want to look at is, that security, being able to share secure links so that you can set a password to those links instead of just sending it in the email. Because, for example, if you send an attachment to an email, it could be to the person who is supposed to see it, but there's very little you can do if they send that forward. And if it's an attachment. So as a link, whether it's for Google Drive or Zoho Work Drive, you can actually send a link with permission so only the correct person can see it. And then one of those most important things is an activity report. So making sure you can actually see who's accessed that link, who's tried to change anything, using kind of a general application like Google Drive that's not really designed for heavy work through teams. You don't get those additional resources. So those are just some of the things I'd like to point out to you. The last thing I want to focus on before we wrap up is remote support. So this is something that we find very interesting nowadays, because we're not able to go to someone's office and help them out. I've been using this a lot, but Zoho Assist or even an application like TeamViewer allows you the ability to log on to someone else's computer and actually just help them troubleshoot. Or if you have a device, let's say you have a desktop at your office that you're not able to access on a regular basis, you can install unattended remote access, then go home and then you can access that computer. So applications like Assist as well as TeamViewer allow you to do this. Of course, pick the one that's best for you. In typical Zoho fashion, most of our applications come in at a lower price point. But again, you just want to do a comparison and see which one has the functions at your price point that are most important to you. I typically use Assist for doing screen share sessions with some of our partners, kind of showing them the ropes. This is something that you can utilize with your clients, especially when your clients are using desktop accounting software. So with that, I want to launch our last poll question. And go ahead and if you didn't get a chance to respond to the earlier ones, go ahead and respond to this one, please. You do need 3 or 4 to receive your CPE. I'm going to go ahead and just in a couple seconds, when we end the session, you'll see an evaluation pop up. So please make sure you answer that evaluation to receive your CPE credit. I apologize, we had to end kind of quickly. We got a little carried away with some of our discussions, but we really appreciate everyone being on. I'd just like to invite up Val and Nathan. Thank you guys again for all of your input.
Thank you, everyone. Hopefully this was worth your time.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. I know that a lot of our tools and other tools out there can be really helpful for accounting firms working remotely for sure.
And so just want to let everyone know, feel free to message us if you have any questions. Easy way to get a hold of us is accountants@zohocorp.com. I'll go ahead and put that in the chat. If each of you could put in your email address as well, folks can contact us. You can always contact me and I can forward that info, but we're definitely excited to connect with you guys more. So appreciate it and talk to you guys soon. Thank you.